So we're going to talk a little bit about in government in the United States, how we do openness, transparency, and accountability in government in the United States. As I've only been in Ukraine for 1 week, and I'm giving these lectures, and I know there's a problem with your government. There's not much accountability. There's also a lot of bribe taking, corruption, and this type of thing. So my lecture is designed to inform you a bit about how in the United States, how we eliminate corruption and why we just don't have it very much. We do have some corruption in the United States, but it's very small, okay? So I'm going to try and give a few basic ideas of how we do it in my country, okay? In the U.S., we have 3 levels of government. We have the national government in Washington, D.C. We call this the federal government or national government. It's the one in Washington, okay? Donald Trump is president, right? Then the second level, we have 50 states: Texas, Alabama, Florida, New York, California, Kansas, where I'm from. You have, I think, oblast? Okay, we have states. Our states are bigger than oblast, but we have 50 states. Each one of them has a state capital, a capital city. Some of the states are larger. California has 26 million people. My state, Kansas, has 3 million people. So the states are different sizes. Some have larger GDP, some have smaller GDP. Some of the states are wealthier, some of the states are poor. But we have one national government, we have 50 state governments, and then at the bottom level, we have about 200,000 we call local government, mostly city, like mayor of a city. Here in Kiev, you have a mayor, what's his name? Klitschko. You have the mayor of Kiev is Klitschko. We have about 200,000 local governments. We have the most famous would be New York City, or Los Angeles, or Dallas, or Miami. These are big famous cities. We also have smaller cities like Kansas City. I'm from Kansas City. It's a smaller city. And then we have you have small villages, we have small towns, and even some small villages also. The small towns always have a mayor. Like you have Mayor Klitschko, we have a mayor in our cities. The big cities and even the small towns have a mayor and local city council, okay? So 3 levels. Federal government in Washington, only 1. We have 50 state governments. Each has a governor and senators. And then we have about 200,000 cities and villages, okay? Local government. And I'm going to speak specifically how we do transparency at the federal and the state level, okay? The local level, the transparency is not so good. The openness and transparency is not so good at the local level. So, one question we should all ask ourselves, if you're concerned about accountability and transparency in government, well, it's not just politicians. There's also, we say bureaucrats. I think maybe you use the word apparatchik. Apparatchik?
And the communist system.
Okay, all right. It's a word that we adopt. But we use the word bureaucrat. You have politician is the guy that is elected to office from political party, like Donald Trump. I used to be a politician, okay? But we also have the bureaucracy that implements all the programs. And there are many, the bureaucracy is much bigger than the politicians. The politicians are the most famous ones, but the bureaucrats are many, many more, okay? So all of these people should be held accountable for performance of the government. Typically in the U.S., the politician is held accountable, but if the bureaucrat causes the problem, if the bureaucrat does not pick up the garbage, if the bureaucracy does not make sure the roads are repaired, the politician is the one that is held responsible. But truly, to make government work properly, all of these people must be held accountable and held responsible to make the government better. Not just the politicians, but also the bureaucracy, okay? So in the U.S., we have ways of holding open and responsible the politicians, but also the bureaucrats, okay? Let's talk about politicians first. In my state, Kansas, each of the 50 states, the laws are different, but they're similar. The laws are similar, but not quite the same, okay? For example, in my state, when you're a candidate, you're running for office, you're running in an election, you're standing in election to be chosen as a politician, you must file a report that shows who is giving money for my election. So if this lady gives me money, I must put her name, her address, and how much money and the day she gives me money. If this gentleman gives money for my election, I put his name, his home address, how much money he gives, and the date. All of this goes on the internet. All of it goes in a paper report, but the paper reports are all put on the web. You guys have smartphones, yeah? You have access to internet. You can look right now while I'm talking and find my, we call it campaign finance report, election campaign finance. You can look right now for Kansas. It might take a few minutes, but you can find my last report from the year 2012, okay? It's all public record. I must show who gave me money, how much money, what date, and where this person, what is their home address, okay? Same if it's a business. If this lady, these two ladies together own a business together, a business can give money also. I must report the name of the business, the address, how much money their business gave, and the date. Okay, all of this is public record. And for most of us, there's no reason to cheat. And I'll come to that. We have a lot in our system. We have two political parties, the Democrats and Republicans. Yeah, we have two major parties. And it's a competition. It's like Olympics. You know, the Olympics is competition. You have France and Germany and Ukraine and Russia. Everybody's competing. In American political competition, we have the Democrats and the Republicans. And each party wants to control power. And it's every 2 years or 4 years we have elections. And so the two political parties, they're always watching. The Democrats are watching the Republicans, looking to see if they make a mistake. Then we exploit, we show the journalists and the media, these guys made a mistake, they were not properly reporting their contributions. The same with her party. The Democrats are watching the Republicans every minute, just watching as close as possible. The politicians are watching, the staff that works for, they're all watching one another, trying to find a mistake. So see if you cause a problem, then we report you to the media. So it becomes very embarrassing for your party. So the number one form of transparency and openness in the American system is the fact that the two political parties are watching each other. There's no law. It's not a law. It's competition. The Olympics, you guys watch the Olympics, right? Is there a law that says you must run faster than the other guy? No, there's no law mandating to be competitive. You're competitive because you want to be. You want to win the gold medal, right? If you're in the Olympics, you want to win the gold medal. There's no law mandating you must win gold medal. It's in your own mind. You're an athlete. You want to win the Olympics gold medal, right? It's the same with our political system. The Democrats are watching the Republicans are watching the Democrats. There's no law mandating this. It's because both parties want to compete and win. We want to win the presidency. We want to win control of the Senate. We want to win control of the Congress. And so the two political parties are always watching each other. Okay? Furthermore, in Washington, D.C., and in all the 50 state capitals, we have many journalists, television, newspaper, and in the modern world, we have online journalists, yeah? And so the journalists also are watching the politicians, because journalists, you know, when they're a young journalist, nobody knows who they are. They're not famous yet. But if a journalist can find a politician doing something wrong, and this journalist or media, they write about it, they become famous themselves, okay? They don't get money, but they want journalists, media, reporters, they would all like to be famous at some point in their life. So we have the two political parties watching each other. We have the journalists all watching the process, and they're digging, they're looking, they're trying to find a problem so they can be the first one to disclose, you know, Senator Steineger has a problem. Senator Steineger did something bad. So if this guy is the journalist and his name is on the story, he becomes famous because he was the first guy to discover that I was doing something bad, okay? So this, in essence, this is what keeps the American system very open and very transparent. We have competition between two political parties, Democrat and Republican. And we also have many journalists, television, we say newspaper, newsprint, and now with the World Wide Web, everybody's a journalist. So we have many people watching. and it keeps the system very open and clean and fair. It's not perfect. The American system is not perfect. It is theoretically possible to have corruption in the national government, but it's very difficult because it's very easy to be caught. And if you get caught, you're punished, you go to jail, and you lose face, you're humiliated. Your family is embarrassed, your wife doesn't like you, your kids don't like you anymore either. So in the US system, because it's very open, and because the two political parties are watching and all the journalists, everyone is watching, it's almost impossible to have corruption and bribery in the federal and even the state level. Our 50 state capitals, they also have two political parties, Democrat and Republican. They have many journalists, they're all watching. So it's possible, but it's very difficult. We used to have some corruption, 30, 40, 80 years ago in some of the states, but it's been cleaned up over time. And the bottom level of government, with these cities and small towns, if you're in a big city, if you're the mayor of New York City or mayor of San Francisco, same thing, many people are watching, so it's theoretically possible that there could be bribery or corruption, but it's also difficult. The place it does happen sometimes is some of the small villages, small towns with maybe 5,000 people, and it does not happen often, but occasionally in a small town, at the local government, as we call this local government, there's no Democrat, there's no party, there's no Democrat or Republican. Each candidate runs as individual person, okay? We have political parties at national level and the state level, but not so much at local level. So we do not have this informal system of everyone watching everyone else at some of the very small towns. The very small towns, maybe they only have 1,000 people or 5,000 people, so it's more informal, and even sometimes no journalists, nobody from the newspaper or television goes to these meetings. And so occasionally we do have a few problems at the local level, but not often. The American system is just very open. Many people are watching, so it's difficult to have corruption. It's possible, but very difficult. And if you're caught, your family is embarrassed, your friends are no longer your friends. So the penalty is very high. You go to jail, but you lose all your family and friends as well. So it just doesn't happen a whole lot. I also mentioned bureaucrats. So that's politicians, okay, elected officials. We also have the bureaucrats that sometimes there's occasional corruption there. Again, not very often. I mean, the penalty if you're caught is very high. You go to jail, your family is embarrassed, your friends are no longer your friends. So it happens occasionally, but not very often. And once again, it's at these smaller towns, small villages where no one's watching at all. It makes, several times each year we read in the newspaper of corruption, and it's often in some of the small towns we have someone who writes checks. They write a check, they pay for the gas for the city government building, they pay for a road construction project, they're paying the bills for the city, small village. And occasionally these people will very quietly, they write 25 checks every week or 100 checks every week. And we do have these occasional examples where someone creates a small company that's maybe their third cousin, and they write a check to that small company, and no one is watching. And occasionally this money is stolen in this manner, but not very often. So I've told you a little bit about the two political parties and how we're watching each other. And this system works pretty well. I've also tried to suggest that and tell you it's not just the politicians that must be accountable, but also the bureaucrats, okay? The bureaucrats are responsible to fix the politicians decide to fix the roads. Ukraine has bad roads, is that right? Everyone agree? The roads are not so good? Well, that's true, they're not very good. So let's use roads as an example in your country. The politicians decide we must fix the roads. The bureaucrats, the bureaucracy, are the one that they design, they get the job done, or they don't get the job done. In Ukraine, they don't. For some reason, your country gives money to repair roads. What's happened to the money? Where has it gone? The money, maybe some of it's taken corruption by politicians, but they're giving money to these bureaucrats. I see it. I see construction workers every day. I've been here a week. Every day I see someone with some big trucks and some big machinery digging. So there's someone doing some of the work, but not enough. Why? What happened to the money? They have trucks, they have excavation equipment, they have men. Why are they not getting the job done? In the U.S., in many states, we do what's called performance audit. Performance audit. An audit, there are different types of audit, okay? You can do financial audit where you add and subtract numbers. You add 2 plus 2 plus 6 plus 8 equals 14. You add that's a financial audit. Every banks do financial audits, accountants do financial audits. A performance audit is something different. Performance audit tries to measure why are the roads not being fixed. A performance audit is not counting the numbers. It's not adding the numbers up. A performance audit is not a way to find criminals. A performance audit is a method, it's a exercise, it's a method to discover why are the roads not being fixed. We have money, we have trucks, we have equipment, we have men. Why do the roads not get, what's the problem? They go out there every day, they're digging, how come they can't fix the road? A performance audit is more like an analytical tool. It's a bit more it's less about money and more about the process. Okay, so I think this is something that your country needs to learn how to do, is performance audits. Why is the government incapable of fixing the roads? And so it's maybe a bit, for me, a bit difficult of a concept to explain to you today, but it is something your country needs to learn how to do over the next 20 years. You need to analyze and examine your government, agencies, the bureaucrats. Why are they not able to fix the roads? How come they cannot renovate all these apartment buildings? Why is there such a problem with agriculture? You have good agricultural land. How come you're not growing more crops and selling crops to Europe? So a performance audit is an analytical exercise. It's a bit of an inquisition to determine why are we not able to reach this goal? Why are we not able to fix the roads? Okay. I brought with me, again, this is hard to explain to you sitting here, we've only just met. This would take an entire semester-long lecture, 3 or 4 months of lecture to explain how this really works, and I have 10 minutes. So I brought with me a couple of these audits I'm going to give to Professor, maybe he could make it an assignment to read these at some point. But this is from my state, not from Washington, but it's from my state. And for example, we did a performance audit on information technology. You guys understand, I mean, you're the internet generation. You're the generation that's grown up with smartphones. So you understand information technology, IT. This was an audit to look at our state agencies and their IT. Do they have enough security? Yes or no? One thing Ukrainians know very well is Russians. Russians are very good at hacking computer systems, right? The Russians hack our computer systems. They cut into our IT systems in the US, and they do it to you guys also. So IT security is very important. Last year's elections, we had Russia interfering in our American elections. They did this on Facebook, they did this on social media, but they also hacked into some of our computer systems, okay? This was a performance audit for my state to determine, does our state IT systems, do they have enough security, not enough security, so-so? And so this is a, what is this, 22-page examination. The auditors went to several of our state bureaucracies and they asked questions and they watched and they looked to determine, are these bureaucrats, are they practicing good security? Do they need better computers? Are they doing stupid things? You know, with computer you have password, yeah? You guys have passwords on password on your phone? Sometimes people, they put their they can't remember, so they write it, on paper, and they put it next to the computer. That is a security breach. If you write your password and put it on the computer, somebody can come by and, I know the password. Because it's a very simple error. And we found when we did this audit, that some of the bureaucrats, they can't remember the passwords. They write it on, let's say, sticky paper, small piece of paper, and they leave it on the computer. That means anybody can come by and type in the password and you're in the system. So that was a simple, very simple error. But we also had some technology problems as well. So this is a performance audit from the state of Kansas on information technology on our security. Is it good? Is it bad? Does it need to be improved? Okay, that's one example. We have another one. So in Ukraine, like the United States, we have prisons, yes? If you're a bad guy, you go to prison. If you kill someone, you go to prison, right? In the United States, we also have special prison for people, young people, under the age of 18. If you're 18 or older, you're considered adult. You guys are all adults. So you go to the big prison, which is really ugly and nasty. If you're under 18, you're considered juvenile, and you go to special prison. It's not so bad. There's much more care given to young people that are in prison, and you have to do something really bad, like killing someone or beating, really bad things. And we call this juvenile justice prison, or juvenile justice authority. It's an organization just for young people under the age of 18. And we have one of these in my state. It's operated by the state of Kansas government, and they were having some problems. It's not so much corruption, but they were hiring people. Some of the guards were also people with criminal background. That's not allowed. So one of the reasons for the audit was to determine why did you hire people with criminal background? It's not allowed. How did this happen? What was the mistake? Also, some of the security in the prison, the guards would leave the doors unlocked, so some of the young prisoners can just walk out the door. At nighttime, it's kind of quiet, so they would just walk out the door and run off. So this audit was also performed to try and determine why is the security so bad in this prison. It's not like the young people are fighting or killing each other in the prison, but they were just walking out. There was no security to keep them in. So we did a performance audit on this juvenile prison to determine why are these problems happening? What can you do to fix the problem, okay? So again, backing up, a performance audit is not counting numbers. It is not about trying to put some boss in jail, okay? It's not about trying to punish the bureaucrat or put them in jail. It's about fixing the problem. The audit is designed to determine what the problem is and how to fix it, okay? Ukraine has bad roads. Why? Let's determine what's wrong with the process. They're giving money, they have trucks, they have big machinery, they have men. Why can't you fix the road? Look, why can't you fix all these roads and highways? So they try and look at the process, the bureaucratic process, to determine what's broken in the process. How do we make it better? This is the role of a performance audit. I'm going to leave these with Professor. I mean, they're all in English, and they're probably really, if you try and read this, you'll fall asleep. It's not very exciting stuff to read, but if you're a young person in this room and you care about Ukraine and you care about public policy and you want your government to be better, then you should learn how to do performance audits. Your country needs it really badly, okay? So I've talked a little bit about how we hold accountable the politicians, and it's mainly through the competitive process between the Democrats and the Republicans and journalists. I told you a little bit about, the word we use is disclosure. I file a report that shows who gave me money, what day, how much, and where they live, and those reports are all available online. There's more disclosure. We also, in the US, we have lobby groups, lobbyists who go to the government to ask for favors or ask to change laws, or they ask for government contracts. And in Washington, D.C., we have very powerful lobbyists. Also in the state governments, we have lobbyists. They represent private companies. Sometimes they represent NGOs. But their job is to go to the government to get favors, to get contracts, to get a change in the law that makes it better for their company. There's nothing wrong or unlawful about lobbying. It's perfectly legitimate. But the lobbyist must also disclose so if you're a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., let's say this lady is a lobbyist, She's representing some construction company who's they favor building more roads. You work for the big construction company, they want more money to build roads. She must register her name, the company she works for, and also the address of this company. It's called, and it's all available online. Each of the 50 states also have registration for lobbyists. They must register their name, the company they represent, and also if they take, it's allowed, the lobbyists can take me to dinner or maybe even watching a sports, go to the football game. That's all perfectly legal in my state, but they must disclose this. So if this lobbyist takes me to dinner and football game, it's legitimate, but they must disclose. Not what restaurant, but they must say, I took Senator Steineger to dinner, June 13th, and on June 14th we went football game. So we call this dining and entertainment disclosure. And it's an attempt to be very open and transparent about the lobbying process. The lobbying process is perfectly legal. It happens in Ukraine. Lobbying happens in every government in the world, I think. Every government has lobbying. There's nothing new, there's nothing exactly wrong or bad, unless there's like bribery or corruption. This does happen, but it's, and so when we have all this disclosure, when the lobbyist must disclose who they work for, the address, her name, when they take me to dinner, it makes it a more open and transparent system. It's not perfect, but this information is all available on the World Wide Web. So you can look right now, if you have a smartphone, you can find my financial list for my campaign finance. The last time I was in office was 2012. 2012 election, I was defeated. But you can look at my last campaign finance report right now online. I guess that's not online. On your phone, you can look online at my campaign finance. You can also look at which lobbyists gave money to my election campaign and also which ones took me to dinner or football games. It's all available online. So it's not a perfect system, but it's the way that we do it in my country, okay? So I think I've been talking for about 20 minutes. As I said, this subject of auditing and disclosure, it could take an entire semester. In fact, this is outlined for a semester-long class. So I'm taking one semester. How long is a semester, Professor?
4 months.
4 months? I'm taking 4 months and putting this in 20 minutes. You think you can do the same? But this is a 4-month class I've now made into 20 minutes. So please understand, a lot of information in a very short time, okay? So I think that's all I'm going to talk about. I've told you the most important stuff is about why we don't have so much corruption in our country. It's because the political parties are competing. The Democrats and Republicans are competitors, just like in the Olympics. Just like in the Olympics. And they both want to win the gold medal, and so they're also working hard themselves, but they're also watching the other guy to see if they do something wrong. Did you guys watch the Winter Olympics a few months ago? The Winter Olympics? Surely you watched the Olympics a little bit. What happened to the Russians, the Russian athletes? They were banned because they were doping. We call it doping. The Russian Olympic athletes were banned from competition. That's kind of like in politics. We're always watching the other party to see if they're doing something wrong so that we can, hold them back. We win the gold medal and they don't win at all. So it's kind of the same. You understand competition in the Olympics. In the American political system, it is competition between the Democrats and Republicans and also the journalists. Everyone's watching. Everyone's trying to, do well for themselves, but also hold back the other guys. And I've talked a little bit about the bureaucracy. The politicians make the decisions. The bureaucrats implement the programs. The bureaucrats fix the roads, or they don't get the roads fixed. And we have performance audits in my country to determine why aren't the roads being fixed? Why are you doing such a bad job? And again, a performance audit is not about criminal activity. It's not about adding the numbers. It's more an analytical process to look at the bureaucratic process. Why can't they get the job done? Why can't they fix the roads? So I think I'm going to open it up for your questions. We can talk about these subjects. We can talk about Donald Trump. We can talk about whatever you want. But we've got about 30 minutes, I think. 20? 15. 15 minutes. Who has a question? This gentleman, please.
Question, I want to ask you about your opinion about an accident which took place a year ago in Charlottesville, Virginia, when it was the very big problem when people of one political ideas attacked people with other political ideas, and how government must react on this accident.
Okay. You know, we had a demonstration in Virginia last year, and during the election, we had a demonstration, and it became violent. There was a larger group who did not like Donald Trump, and a smaller group, some of whom were more kind of very right-wing racist organization. Some of this group was also not right-wing racist, but they were pro-Trump. So a larger group of anti-Trump, smaller group of pro-Trump. The small group had some racist people in there. And it did become violent. To back up a little bit, in the United States, our constitutional rights include freedom of speech. It's one of the most basic rights we have, one of the most powerful, unchallenged rights that we have is the freedom of speech. And it's very progressive or very, I don't know, liberal. That you can say almost in the United States, you can say almost anything you want to anybody else, and it's allowable. Even hate speech. In Germany, they ban the swastika, they ban Nazis. In the U.S., it's not banned. You can be a Nazi in the United States if you want to. You can show swastika if you want to. You know, swastika, this one. In America, freedom of speech is very powerful, very broad, very tall, very deep. And so this demonstration in Virginia, one side was anti-Trump and they have signs and they're yelling against Trump. This other group, you know, they're pro-Trump, and they ended up getting in a fight. And there was some violence, and even one guy drove a car. He drove an automobile and ran over some, I think killed one woman. So this does happen, but it's not common. Most demonstrations in the U.S. are polite. People demonstrate and they're polite. They don't throw litter. You know, they don't get in fight. 99% of the time they have demonstrations, there's no problems. But 1% of the time they have a problem. Of course, the television shows up and it's on CNN, it's on the worldwide news. So it does happen, but because of freedom of speech, the right to freedom of speech in my country, people can have demonstrations every day if they want to.
Can I follow up on that question? Please. And I have a question about Black Lives Movement. What's your take on this? Because I think there have been quite a few cases of violence surrounding the protests, but they claim authorities and police in particular in kind of discriminating people of color.
Yeah. The question is about race and the Black Lives Matter social movement. Oh, it's difficult. It is of all the people in prison in the United States, we have a very large prison population. The majority are young. We say black or minority men. When you say black, it's black. We also have large Hispanic or Mexican population, so we use the word minority. The very large number of these guys are in jail. Of all the people in jail in the United States in prison, this many are black or Mexican. It's overwhelmingly men, young men, not old guys, not so many women, young minority men, and they go to prison for murder, drug dealing, this type of thing. It's for the police in the U.S., some of the really bad neighborhoods, in a big city like New York, or even a place like Kansas City, we're not so big, but in the really poor neighborhoods, it can be a little bit violent. There's places in Los Angeles, South Central Los Angeles or South Chicago, the police don't even like going there unless there's two policemen. They will not go there with just one guy. They go there with two guys because they can be attacked. On the other hand, there has been police brutality, and it's been documented on television. Of the police are, they get some guy, 3 or 4 cops beating one guy, and it's really difficult to make a judgment because the television only shows one man on the ground and 4 cops punching him out, right? You guys have all seen this, yeah, on television? What they don't show is what happened 5 minutes before that. This guy on the ground, maybe he was shooting someone, maybe he was beating up women. We don't know, because the television only shows one guy on the ground and 4 cops beating him up. You know, it's not a very good clip. It's not a good video clip. But the television news never shows, well, what was this guy doing 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before? Maybe he was doing something really bad. Maybe he shot someone and then ran, and the cops had to chase him. And this guy, you know, there's drugs that really pump up your body. Meth, crystal meth, I'm sure it's in this country, crystal meth, you know, that pump your body up, and you can fight, one guy can fight like 3. And so you see 4 cops, it's because this guy, maybe he's on meth, and he can fight back really strongly, so it takes 3 or 4 cops to really, you know, get him down. It's a very difficult subject, because sometimes the cops are too quick to shoot or beat. But other times, I will also say, in defense of the police, we don't always know what the policemen, what they saw. We don't know what happened 5 minutes ago. We only know what the television video camera is showing, okay? Black Lives Matter is a social movement that started several years ago, and, you know, they have some good points in that, you know, a black person can be just as equal to white or anybody else. I have to be honest with you, one of the things, every time I see Black Lives Matter, in the United States, we have a lot of murder by gun, right? We have mass shootings where they get like AK-47 and shoot a whole bunch of people. That doesn't happen often, but when it does, many people die. And almost always it's a white man that's doing these mass shootings. If you look at our crime statistics, the mass shootings are almost always done by a white man. Sometimes young guys, more often not so young. But if you look at all death by gun, the total number of deaths by gun, the mass shootings are very small. Even when they're shooting 25, 35, 50 people, the total number of mass shootings is small. The number of, we say, one guy killing another guy is 95%. 95% of gun death in the U.S. is one man killing another, and the majority of it, it's really sad, but the truth is the majority of gun death in the United States is young minority men, black or Hispanic, killing another young black guy, and always the same thing. It's a drug deal that went bad, or over a girlfriend, they're fighting over women, and they very quickly resort to guns. You know, first they're punching and yelling, and they very quickly resort to guns. But if you really are interested in this subject, in the national government, we have the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. They are the ones, they have all the statistics for crime in the United States. They keep they're like the bibliothèque. Bibliothèque, is that right? They're like the FBI is the bibliothèque for crime statistics in America. And if you look at their numbers, I mean, it's pretty clear. The mass shootings, percent of all gun death, the mass shootings are the most scary. They get the most publicity from television around the world. But not that many people are dying from mass shootings. The vast majority is one-on-one, young men killing other young men, and the majority of those are, we say, minority, black or Hispanic. So it's the truth. It's sad, but it's true. And I don't defend that this happens. I'm just explaining in a neutral way. And, you know, it's a bit of a cynical answer, but some people, when they say Black Lives Matter, well, okay, then stop killing each other. And that's okay. It's an unusual response. In the U.S., it would be politically incorrect to clap like that. But it's the truth. I mean, if you care about your lives, then stop killing each other. So anyway, that's the answer. Lady in the back.
And that's the last question, because we have to go.
Okay.
Thank you for your lecture, and you said a lot about transparency of the political system, a lot about the openness, and the people can find any information, including some specific information information about money for elections and so on. And I would like you to ask about, for example, in Ukrainian reality, Ukrainian policymakers are not so willing to give to ordinary people such information, and it's much more restricted, and it's just openness, it's just formal for our reality. And of course, I think that it's impossible to make a very quick jump and step
Yes.
for it. And maybe you can give some piece of advice about some process which will make like step by step for you, because it's not enough to create some act and make people, make policymakers to be more close to ordinary people and to society in general. And what can you?
Yeah. You ask a very good, very important question, very good question, and it's also one that's difficult to answer. I think it's going to take 20 or 30 years in Ukraine to make the government. I think it's going to take a long time. You're young. You guys are what, 20 or 22 years old, something like this. Your parents and grandparents lived under the old Soviet model, the old Soviet system. In the Soviet system, information was controlled at the Soviet level, and people didn't know anything. So you had 70 years approximately, 1923 until 10 years ago. You had about 2 or 3 generations of Ukrainians. This is all they know. They don't know any other way but the Soviet way. And so now you're transitioning to more Western or open style system. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take 20 or 30 years. What I believe is your generation, you guys will be the one someday you'll be in power. You're young people now, you're university students, but 20 years from now, you guys will be in the Rada. Or 30 years from now, you guys will be in charge. You guys will be the bosses. So I think it's going to take that long. Your generation globally, around the world, not just you guys Ukrainians, but you're the first generation to grow up with mobile phone and the World Wide Web. When I was a young guy, the telephone was like this. Same with Pavlo. We grew up in the old times before mobile phones. Your generation has so much more access to information, more than ever in human history. More than ever in human history of the entire human race. Your generation has more access to information. More of you have I'm looking at all the smartphones around. Everybody has a smartphone now. So that means you have access to World Wide Web. It means you have access to information. You can see how other people are living. You can see, hey, these people in Germany are living good. Let's live like them. These people in America are living good. Let's live like them. These people in Russia are, we don't want to live like that. So I believe your generation has the best chance to make this a better country, but it's going to take a long time because your generation has no power. You're just students. But someday, the people in the Rada now, in fact, I'm going to the Rada in about 40 minutes from now to meet with some of those guys. That generation, someday they'll be old and they'll die, and you guys will be the bosses. You guys will be in charge. So I think it takes a long time. It takes a long time. You guys must study now and be patient. But someday when your turn comes, and you can be trying to improve things. It doesn't mean you wait 20 years, but it's going to take time. But in preparation for me to come to Ukraine, I've been knowing about this for 4 months. So I've been reading a lot online. And there are many small reforms for the economy. Almost every month there's new reforms to make the economy more open and more in the private sector, and that's all good. Really what you need, you need to fix corruption, you need to end this war in the East and Donbass, but you really need to improve the economy. We have this saying in America, if your wallet, this is where I keep my money. I don't have much money here today, but this is called a wallet or pocketbook. Or for a lady, maybe you call it the purse. If this thing is getting fatter, bigger, everything's easier. You have more money. If it's getting smaller, everything is more difficult. You guys want your economy to grow. You need to focus on getting economic growth in this country. It's going to be difficult, but it can happen. And I see promising signs when I read about you have NGOs that are following the government and making small improvements. every month or so, they're making small reforms to make it easier to start a business, to make it better for the economy. But those reforms, they can take years. You know, it's like planting a seed. Like, you know, for a garden, you understand garden, you put a seed in the ground, it takes a long time for the little seed to become tomato plant and you can eat the tomatoes. It's the same with the economy. You start now planting seeds, it takes 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. But you guys really need to focus on growing your economy. And once again, I give your generation a lot of hope because you're smart, you're well educated, you have access to the World Wide Web, which means you have access to ideas and other models, other methods. There's one more thing. You have the Ukrainian diaspora, the Ukrainians who have moved to other countries. Well, first off, if they came back, all of them came back tomorrow, the unemployment would be very high because there's not enough jobs, right? So in a way, it's good. These Ukrainians are all around the world, in Germany, in France, in Spain, in the United States, because they're learning. They're making money, but they're also learning about better economy, better government. So maybe some of those, and probably some of those guys will never come home. They'll stay living in Florida, it never gets cold. You know, they'll stay living there. But other Ukrainians in the diaspora, they will come back. They will come back. And they'll help you make a better country. So that's my answer.